Fix Game Week 30 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be discussing all things Game Week 30, as I know there are plenty of hot topics that we need to discuss, including the likes of Haaland, whether do we buy him or not, Luke Shaw's current injury status, lots of captaincy debate, as I really do think it is an open field going into Game Week 30. And of course, any questions that the community have, it'd be fantastic to hear your thoughts going into Game Week 30. And as always, with the structure of this live stream, if you have any questions, don't wait until the end. Make sure you do put them in the chat and I'll be answering them throughout this live stream. We're going to be hopefully going for just under an hour or so, and hopefully that'll be enough time to answer any questions that you all have. So let me know if you're tuning in. Where are you tuning in the world? I can already see Cheeks in the chat. Moderating is always much appreciated, my friend. And if you're new around here, make sure you do consider hitting that subscribe button and dropping a like on the live stream. Is always appreciated. It always helps get the reach out to other people who may be looking for Game Week 30 advice, and hopefully I can provide that for you guys. So just to give you a rundown of what we're doing on this live stream, we're going to be looking at my current team for Game Week 30 and my transfer plans. We're going to be discussing whether you guys should be buying Haaland back into your teams if you don't have him already. We're also going to be discussing, of course, the captaincy for Game Week 30 and as well the predictive points for a lot of the players in Game Week 30, just to try and help your transfer strategy going forward in the coming game weeks, not just in this single isolation. So again, guys, let me know if you are in the chat. It'd be awesome to see who is in here. We see Cristiano Ronaldo in the chat. Very, very interesting on a Friday evening to be in the chat, Cristiano. He's asking best Shaw replacement, and we need to update you guys in the sense of Luke Shaw has been confirmed unavailable for the home game against Everton. It's really frustrating because he came off early in the game against Brentford where they kept a clean sheet, and Everton at home looked like a fantastic opportunity for another clean sheet for Man United. But Luke Shaw does look like he is out for this game week, which is really, really frustrating. So first and foremost, I think we need to remind ourselves regarding Luke Shaw and Man United assets that they are a long-term hold for our teams. Man United, for example, have Nottingham Forest away in Game Week 31. They blank in Game Week 32, but I expect a lot of you that bought Luke Shaw had the free hit 32 strategy in place. They then have Spurs away in 33 and then a double in 34, followed by some other fantastic fixtures. And because of that reason, I don't think selling Luke Shaw is actually a desperate transfer for your teams. I think if you were planning on bringing in Haaland first and foremost, I would look at your squad and say to yourself, is my squad good enough just to simply bench Luke Shaw this game week and then look to have him for the longer term? If we get news that he may be out for 4 or 5 game weeks, then of course selling Luke Shaw is the right move. But right now, I personally think holding Luke Shaw for this game week and just using your squad is the best move to make. But of course, it is going to be team dependent on how good the squad depth is for you there. And apologies, Cheeks, I saw your question about Tony to Haaland for Game Week 30. That is something we are going to touch on later on the live stream, so make sure we are sticking around for that one. And Rio saying, is it worth a -4 to replace Shaw by Stones or Dalot? Now, Dalot's a big question mark right now because I do think Wan-Bissaka is still waiting in the wings to share minutes with Dalot. So I like the move, but I would say to you that maybe I'll go for Martinez over Dalot just because of that minutes security that I don't think necessarily Dalot offers to you, as I think Wan-Bissaka could come in at any time. John Stones, I really do like him as a pick, but we need to remember he does blank in Game Week 32 as well. If you are free hitting in 32, then absolutely, that's a perfectly fine move. But just be cautious of that. And we need to remember they do have 2 very difficult Champions League games against Bayern Munich. Does Pep potentially rest John Stones in one of these Premier League games, as he is spoilt for choices in the defence with Kyle Walker, Lewis? We also have defenders like Laporte not getting game time. Stones could easily get a little bit of a bench, and I think that's my one worry if you were to go to Stones this game week. I choose to say Shaw's injury isn't serious from the sounds of it, so it might be worth hanging on to him now, and that's exactly what my thought process is right now. With no news about the duration of it, I think holding Shaw for the longer term is actually the best move to make, and then we can reassess in Game Week 31 on what to exactly do going forward. JP saying, do you think a Villa defender can keep their returns coming? Well, Villa defence have actually not been performing very well from an underlying stats perspective. Let me get the stats up for a minute just to kind of put some perspective on this, but just to give you a bit of a rundown. Basically, over the last few game weeks since the World Cup, for example, as a team, if I'm looking at per 90 minutes for defending, and expected goals conceded. Aston Villa are actually mid-table for expected goals conceded per game and expected goals conceded per 90 minutes. Aston Villa are at 1.67 per 90, and this is post-World Cup. So Aston Villa right now are delivering, there's no doubt about it, from a returns perspective in FPL. They kept a clean sheet against Chelsea, against Bournemouth, against Crystal Palace, against Everton. So they've been delivering. But I don't necessarily think from the underlying stats perspective, it is going to continue in the long term. And the fixtures coming up are good. Forest, Newcastle, Brentford, Fulham. Fulham without Mitrovic means it's a good fixture. I would argue Brentford and Newcastle are very difficult fixtures. So if I was buying Aston Villa defensive, the only way I would buy him is if you weren't free hitting in game week 32 and you needed some defensive coverage. I don't like the fixture away against Brentford, but Alex Moreno would be the pick of the bunch. I think he has got that left back role stuck now. I think Digne could get some minutes from the bench, but Alex Moreno looks like he has got the game time secure. If you are really looking for guaranteed minutes, then Mings is obviously the route to go for, but I like Alex Moreno from an actual goal scoring and assist potential. And JP's also saying Lampard needs to give the attackers a masterclass in shooting. Honestly, I think they should just play Lampard, to be honest with you. He is going to do a lot better than a majority of those Chelsea players out there. And JP saying, how do you think Lampard affects the Chelsea assets? He didn't like Kepa and might change formation, thus reducing clean sheet and wing-back appeal. Yeah, I really don't think we necessarily need to judge too much right now. And that's a case of don't sell your Chelsea assets and don't buy any Chelsea assets. I really still think Lampard's just going to be in a position right now where can he get them the Champions League and build performances in the Premier League. Now, with the fixtures coming up for Chelsea, just to remind ourselves of what they have in the future, they start off with Wolves away, followed by Brighton at home, and then a blank in game week 32, followed by Brentford, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Forest, Man City, and Newcastle. So, fixture-wise, I think they're quite difficult. I even think Wolves away for Chelsea is going to be a tough fixture, but we'd like to think that Lampard is going to bring the vibes into that team. I think it's too early to judge. I would like to see something early doors, whether it be him deploy a 3-5-2 formation once again to know that Chilwell is still going to be a real threat for the team. If he was to revert to a back four and we were to see the introduction of maybe minutes to the likes of Trevor Chalobah, who may come out of the shadows, these are all things that need to be asked for ourselves. Right now, I just wouldn't assess it too much right now. I couldn't sit here and tell you exactly what formation he's going to play. The one thing I can guarantee you, Mason Mount will definitely play 100%. There's no doubt about that one there whatsoever. Immortal Technique, hope you're doing well. How's Game Week 39 training going? JP's asking. Anyone who doesn't know, that is in regards to the Game Week 39 FPL match that we do at the end of the season, a week after Game Week 38. All charity raising money for Street Charge United, so please do check that out if you haven't already. Of course, it is a charity game first and foremost, but it always gets competitive. For me, yeah, I basically have got I play proper football and I've got a ridiculous schedule, like 8 games in a month. So I'm going to be absolutely fine for that game. I'll be probably fitter than I've ever been. So hopefully we can kick on from last season's win. And last question here is from FPL Bateman saying, yes, Nacho, my man, hope you're doing well, buddy. Haaland purchase and captain, no-brainer, right? I think the purchase is a good move. I think the captaincy is up for debate, but we will come on to that, mate, as I do think that is something that is going to split and divide a lot of the community right now. It's all about whether you think, I'm scared of Haaland, so I need to bring him in, but I'm worried about his minutes. And could we look at the likes of Rashford, Watkins as a guaranteed 90-minute man who could outscore him? So that's something we need to touch on later on in this live stream. So I'm going to come back to the questions, guys, as I always do. I just want to quickly come on to my team and current transfer plans just to give you a bit of an update on where my thought process is right now. So let's get straight to that one there. Okay, guys, so here's my current team right now going into game week 30. And I do apologise. I always say it, current team. And this is actually my team with my planned 1 free transfer. Now, when I done my wildcard back in, I'm going to say week 26, was it? It was a long time ago. Anyway, I done my wildcard team with the anticipation of not having Haaland and looking to bring him in later down the line. And we're in this situation right now where my team currently doesn't have Haaland in. It has Ivan Toney, who is at home against Newcastle. I decided with my transfer strategy last week to sell premium players and leave money in the bank in order to do Ivan Toney to Haaland for my 1 free transfer. And we're in a position right now where that is still an option for me. And the team you can see on your screen right now is basically me doing Ivan Toney to Haaland, which leaves me 0.1 million in the bank. Now, the big thing about Erling Haaland right now is, do we view him as a minutes risk this game week? I think yes is the answer. Is he a minutes risk in 31? Yes, I do think he is. Is the community all moving towards Erling Haaland? Absolutely, there are no doubts about that. Currently, right now, the most transferred in player is Watkins, closely followed by Haaland. So the movement towards Haaland is already accelerating. I expect that to continue over the next 24 hours. And just to give you an update in regards to price changes, and I know a lot of you tune in and potentially want to know that, just getting that up for you now. Potential price changes that might happen tonight include Watkins rising in price, Mings, Matoma, Fabian Schär, Trippier, Martinez, Steele, De Gea and Rashford. Haaland could rise in price if he continues at the trajectory that he is. And just to give you a bit of perspective, Rashford is currently being bought at 2.8%. Apologies. So Watkins is currently the most bought player, but his progress per hour is 5.4%. In contrast, Haaland is currently the second most bought player, and his price is currently going up by 16.7%. So basically, 16.7% per hour, his progress bar is increasing. So we are expecting him to potentially rise in price tonight. I hope that made sense. I do apologise if it didn't. It's a little bit complex with the price changes. But anyway, basically, Haaland is by far the most bought player over the last 24 hours, and that will continue over the next 24 hours as well. So please do be cautious of that if you are planning on buying Haaland, and maybe wait until tomorrow. You might get priced out, so you might need to make that move tonight. The reason why I'm looking to bring in Haaland right now is I know I'm going to want him long term. I'm in a position right now where I have the exact funds available to do the move, and I think if I don't make the move, his price will rise, his price will go up, and then I'll be stuck with 0.0 million in the bank. If we were to get a situation where then we get into game week 31 and I start to think to myself, now I need Haaland, I'm then going to have to make an early transfer. Is if Haaland scores in 30, I am then going to have to make such an early transfer to bring him in, and I would have missed the curve already. Now, yes, I think Julian Alvarez is a fantastic alternative, but realistically, if you buy Alvarez into your team, you've used a free transfer, and again, it comes back to it. You are inevitably going to want Haaland at some point this season. So I feel like, why don't you just get him in now? The risk is going to be there in regards to Haaland, absolutely, whether he does get rotated or not in the coming game weeks. But a lot of us are going to be in the same boat. And you know, after this period ends, you have got Haaland in your team between now and the end of the season. And that is in a position you want to be in. As they are still chasing down Arsenal, they have things to play for in the Premier League. It's not like they are completely in a position like Chelsea where they are out of all the run-ins. They're still competing on both the Champions League and the Premier League run, and I think that is why Haaland just needs to come into your teams this week. Even though I understand some people might want to go a little bit differential, get it done and accept that it is a long-term move rather than a short-term, because if we get to game week 34 and you have been priced out and you need to take a -4, he has Fulham away and West Ham at home, amazing fixtures that he could go off in, and I think you're going to want him either way. Sorry, a little bit parched there. So that is how my current team is looking. Now, of course, Luke Shaw is yellow flagged on the screen that you can see, but he is now confirmed out for game week 30. So what I'm likely to do, I'm not going to worry about Luke Shaw. I don't need to take a -4 to get rid of him. What I will simply do is start him in my starting 11. If Ten Hag was to be lying to us, which I doubt he is, he simply plays for me. There's no scenario I see where Luke Shaw comes off the bench. And then I have Botman as my first sub for Luke Shaw. Now, I think it's quite an interesting debate because Estupiñán could also be a consideration. However, I'm in a position where I'll be selling Ivan Toney, a Brentford attacker. So I think doubling it up on the Newcastle defence just makes sense. I think the clean sheet perspective is definitely more in Newcastle's favour than Brighton's. So I'd rather double down on Newcastle defence and just hope that they do stay strong against a Brentford attack, who I do expect to score. But the same applies to Spurs against Brighton. I think that's going to be one of the games of the game week, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I expect Brighton to win, but I do expect Spurs to score also. So it's all about can Estupiñán deliver from an attack and returns perspective. And based on that, I want to double down on the Newcastle defence rather than go for Estupiñán. But I understand if some people out there maybe think Estupiñán is the better pick if you anticipate both teams to concede on that one there. Now, the captaincy on your screen here is currently on Watkins. However, I would say over the last hour I've started to sway myself more towards Rashford, but I will discuss that one a bit more when we come on to captaincy, as I think it is worth a bit more of a deep dive than me just saying I am preferring Rashford. But we need to remember midfielders get an additional point for a goal and a clean sheet, and that is a big factor in why I think Rashford is very, very tempting going into game week 30. Also, I think from a ceiling perspective, I think it has a higher ceiling than what Watkins offers as well. So it is worth noting that, but I think both are fantastic picks as well. And of course, Haaland on top of that. So that's how the team is currently looking, guys. One free transfer, Tony to Haaland. I might do that tonight if I am worried about a potential Haaland price rise. And I would recommend you guys keep an eye on the Fantasy Football Fix price predictor if you too are worried about the price change in him as well. In terms of price falls, as I didn't mention that, potential players that are going to fall tonight include Nacho, Darwin, Ivan Toney as well falling in price. So again, if you are looking to sell Toney to Haaland, it probably is worth making that move tonight rather than doing it tomorrow, as you could then get priced out, which could be a big issue for a lot of managers out there. So let me check out some more questions, guys. JP, surely Brighton have more goals than them than United, mainly Rashford, Mac 10 or Fernandes, pros/cons. I agree. Brighton are posting some unbelievable underlying numbers from an XG perspective. Based on it from a team perspective, if we were to look at it post World Cup, expected goals as a team, 2.18 per 90 is Man City's. Brighton is at 2.17. This is as a team, so they are right up there with Man City from an attacking perspective. And from Man United's perspective, they are averaging 1.48 per 90 expected goals as a team. So Brighton are clear of Man United post-World Cup. And I do agree, they are definitely a viable option if you are investing in the attack. David, evening. Hope you're doing well, mate. Charlie, hello, mate. Start both McAllister and Matoma over Havertz. If not, which one do I bench? So we have to remember that Havertz has a fixture away against Wolves. Is Havertz going to play? I think we need to ask ourselves these things when Lampard is now at the helm of Chelsea. Could we see Havertz get more game time, less game time? I really don't know on that one. Based on what you have right now, are you debating having both Brighton? I probably would go for both Brighton over Havertz. I really don't like what I'm seeing with Havertz right now. He's clearly lacking confidence in front of goal from a open play perspective. He's pretty ice cold from penalties, even though he has missed a couple. So I probably would go for the Brighton options ahead of Havertz. You have to remember, both being midfielders as well, additional point for a goal, which is a big factor, and McAllister on penalties as well. So it's very difficult, because I would probably say to you, go Matoma. It's very difficult for me to say to you not to pick a midfielder that is on penalties and scoring open play goals and playing for a team that is scoring much more frequently than Chelsea. So yes, I probably would go for the Brighton double up and just hope for a free-flowing game against Spurs. And Cristiano saying, I'm playing Gabriel instead of Shaw because I have Cash too, which is also injured, but got to keep him in the bank. Game week. Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Play Gabriel. Arsenal are still a fantastic team, and I absolutely could foresee a situation where they do just lock down Liverpool. We need to remember, at home, Arsenal are not good defensively. Away from home, they are fantastic. Just to give you an idea on their underlying numbers right now, expected goal conceded away from home, Arsenal are the best post-World Cup at 0.85 per 90. Newcastle second best at 0.89. So away from home, Arsenal are amazing. At home, just to give you a bit of comparison here, Arsenal's expected goals conceded per 90 at home is 1.23. So they are considerably better away from home than they are at home. So if any team was going to keep Liverpool under wraps, it is going to be Arsenal. And you can guarantee Gabriel will be racking up the bonus points if they were to keep a clean sheet in that fixture. Mikhail saying, bench Haaland and start McAllister, or just start Haaland? Absolutely start Haaland. If you have him, you cannot bench him, because if he starts and he goes off against Southampton, your rank is going to get decimated, and I would not be taking any risks at all with that one there. Mads is saying, Kane to Haaland for free, or keep Kane and take a -4 to downgrade Salah or Maddison to Grealish or Andreas. Then I can upgrade from Tony to Haaland. So you're in a really difficult position here because I really don't like the idea of selling Kane, as I really think there are going to be goals in this Brighton game, and I also think he has the potential to haul against Bournemouth. So I like Kane for the next two, and I don't feel comfortable necessarily sitting here and telling you to sell him for Haaland. The problem is, selling Salah right now is a very poor move because the fixtures long term are fantastic for Liverpool. To remind ourselves, Liverpool obviously have a tough game in 30, but then Leeds away in 31, Nottingham Forest in 32, West Ham away in 33, a double in 34, and Brentford at home in 35. Amazing long-term fixtures, and I think if you sell Salah, you're just going to want him back later down the line. So in your position, Mads, I don't know the whole team right now, but I would much rather, if you can, downgrade Maddison and then upgrade Tony to Haaland rather than selling Mo Salah. But I appreciate you might not have the funds available if you do that move. David's saying, currently have one free transfer and thinking of getting one of Edison instead of Kepa, Ake, Stones, Akanji, instead of Rico Henry or Haaland for Kane. David, quite a lot to process that. Let me just have a think. Thinking of getting one of Edison instead of Kepa. Okay, so in terms of Man City defenders, I can't confidently sit here and tell you a player that is going to start every game between now and the end of the season, apart from Edison. Do you need to go into Edison right now? I don't think so, because we need to remember they blank in game week 32. So if you're not free hitting in 32, you are going to put yourself in a position where you are going to be hurt longer term. I don't like you selling Kane for Haaland unless you just view it as a season-long move. Then I don't mind it. I think you're probably going to benefit more. Yes, I think Henry to Ake is probably the move I would like you to do, but I really can't tell you if Ake is going to play every minute. I can tell you that Edison will do. So I probably do prefer Kepa to Edison, but it just doesn't feel like a move that you necessarily need to make. Would I expect Edison to outscore Kepa this game week? Most likely. But will I expect him to outscore him by plenty and justify your free transfer? Probably not. I would rather you focus on getting Haaland in, but can you sacrifice Kane? I probably personally wouldn't, so have you got another way you can get him in? And Subro saying, as Bruno's playing so deep, so what to do with him against Everton? Suggestions, please. I simply would start him, but not consider him as a captain. That is the way I would look at him. I wouldn't be considering to sell him right now, personally. Chat Sport, hope you're doing well. Anyone looking at bringing Chelsea in? No, I would be avoiding Chelsea right now. Main reasons being, they have a blank in game week 32, we need to remember. And they also have incredibly tough fixtures against Brentford, Arsenal and Brighton in the next three fixtures that they're actually playing in. So I would be avoiding Chelsea completely right now. But if you own them, I would not be selling them as we speak. So guys, keep the questions coming in the chat. I, of course, will be answering them throughout this live stream. But while you are putting them in there, I'm going to move on to the next section, which is just looking at some minutes over the coming game weeks and why Haaland as a transfer might be a risk for some of us. Okay, so as you can see here, we have got currently the upcoming captaincy selection between now and double game week 34. Just to give you a bit of a visualization on which players are potential captains for our FPL teams. And we've put a separate column in saying UEFA, which is the Champions League for applicable teams. And that is going to be in reference to Haaland, obviously at Man City, and of course, Man United with their fixtures in the Europa League. Otherwise, all the other teams that you can see on your screen here do not have any European fixtures. Therefore, their team is fully focused on the Premier League alone. So we need to look at this in isolation for Man City, as I think that's the big one right now in regards to Erling Haaland. So you can see here, they have game week 30 away against Southampton. They then play Bayern Munich, and I'm just going to give you a bit of a rough time frame here. So they play Southampton on the Saturday. They then play Bayern on the Tuesday. They then play Leicester in game week 31 on the Saturday. And then they have the second leg of the Champions League on the Wednesday. So they go Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday. I think this is the big worry for a lot of FPL managers right now. I think a lot of us are anticipating Haaland to get game time against Southampton and, of course, start against Bayern. If we were to get a situation where Bayern Munich were to beat Man City in the first leg, you can guarantee that Haaland is going to be absolutely essential for the second leg of the Champions League. And with it being a Saturday, Wednesday turnaround, could you see Haaland get benched in 31 and Julian Alvarez be deployed? And I absolutely could see that situation arising. And because of that reason, I would be a little bit cautious about Haaland's minutes in 31 and therefore not necessarily a captaincy option. The big thing about it, and I've discussed this with Haaland, is I do think his minutes are going to get managed over the next 2 game weeks, but it still doesn't mean that I don't want to bring him into my team, as I know he is a player that I want regardless. And if you have the opportunity to bring him in 30, I do think we just accept that minutes are potentially a risk, but you are just looking at him as a player that you're going to bring in and he is going to stay in your team between now and game week 38. And with that Southampton game, we know that they can be absolutely atrocious. And if there is a team that is going to gift Haaland a few goals in a 50-minute window, they are definitely the team that could do that. So I would say that about Haaland. If you are worried about the minutes, he could do enough damage against Southampton in 50 minutes that other players would need 90 minutes for. Of course, in 32, Man City have their semi-final in the FA Cup against Sheffield United, and then we get back to some normal resumption with Arsenal, Fulham 4 days later, and then West Ham 3 days after that. So the schedule is going to be really, really tight for Man City, and rotation is going to happen regardless, but we do need a piece of that attacking pie, and Haaland is always going to be the answer in that Man City team as a forward. Now, looking at some other notable players, we need to also discuss Man United. And of course, with them, they do have the Europa League tie that we need to consider for their minutes. However, when we look at both Rashford and Fernandes, these are two players that minutes are very, very consistent at no matter what stage of the season. Now, with Man United, they are playing Everton on a Saturday. They then play Sevilla on the Thursday, Sunday away against Nottingham Forest. They then play Sevilla the following Thursday, and then they have the semi-final against Brighton 3 days later, followed by the Spurs game that you can see on your screens in game week 33, 4 days after the FA Cup semi-final. So there's a lot of tight turnarounds for Man United, very similar to that of Man City. But I do think with Fernandes and Rashford, these two are minutes monsters, and they're going to be playing regardless of the fixtures. I just don't see a situation where they're going to get rested. Maybe the Nottingham Forest away game, but Man United are chasing top 4, and the options available to Ten Hag in their positions are few and far between that he trusts. So I think if they are fit, they are absolutely starting in those games. And again, it comes back to the captaincy discussion about game week 30. Haaland's minutes against Southampton could be at risk. I don't see any risk for Rashford's minutes in game week 30 at home against Everton. And we need to remind ourselves, Rashford at home is an absolute monster. I haven't actually got the stats up in front of me here regarding Rashford, but I would think that his goals to game ratio at home is an absolute joke. Let me get this up for you. Give me 2 seconds based on players. Rashford has scored home and away. So Rashford has played 8 games at home and he has scored 8 goals. Away from home, he has played... Sorry, let me do the whole season. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. Okay, Rashford at home this season has played 14 and scored 12. Away from home, he has played 14 and scored 3. So when we're at Old Trafford, Rashford is a monster. And looking at his underlying numbers away from home, we can see here that Rashford is currently averaging an XG of 0.22 over the course of the season. At home, he is averaging an XG of 0.64. So it is triple that of him away. So he is dominating the stats when he is at home. So absolutely a monster when they're at home. And that is the reason why I think Rashford is a fantastic option in game week 30 for us. Apologies there. Just something cropped on my screen. It just lost track of my mindset a minute there. Apologies. Other players we need to consider. Harry Kane, home game against Bournemouth. Home game against Brighton, no other cup competitions to deliberate about, but the fixtures after game week 31 are Newcastle, Man United and Liverpool. I think we could sell, if we want to, Harry Kane in game week 33 if you were potentially planning on free hitting in 32, and use the money from Kane to bring in Mo Salah. As you can see, game week 33, a fantastic fixture away against West Ham, and then a double in game week 34. I think that's where Salah is really going to come into his own if we are looking for him, and a brilliant captaincy option if you were wanting to be a little bit differential at the back end of the season. Outside of that, Watkins, absolutely a captaincy option in game week 30. In 31, obviously not going to be, and then 32, everyone's going to be free hitting. If you're not, then of course you likely have likes of a Saka in your team or a Mo Salah, those are going to be better options than Watkins. And then 33, I will be very surprised if people go for Watkins at home against Fulham. Even though Haaland has home against Arsenal, I think people will go that route. And then after that, Watkins' captaincy in 34 becomes obsolete because of the doubles. So I think Watkins for the next 2 is absolutely fine, maybe the next 3 or 4. But after that, I think we move away from Watkins, and I think that will be the general community feel for Watkins. I think the love will eventually end for him, it is worth noting. SB saying take March out for Grealish. Absolutely not. I think March is a fantastic hold still for this game week. Take a hit to get Haaland in or what? Pudge, it's going to depend on who you're selling. Haaland fit, sounds like he is going to be fit, but whether his minutes are going to be managed is the big question right now. Mikel saying, who do I captain? Haaland, Salah, Saka, Rashford, Jesus, Watkins. This is the big thing right now. There are so many fantastic captaincy options going into game week 30. I think looking at it right now, I am waving towards Rashford as we speak. Remember, midfielders get an extra point for a goal and a clean sheet, and I expect both of those for Rashford in this game week. The minutes for Haaland, I would question, could be a little bit risky with the game against Southampton. I could see a situation where he plays 60 minutes if the game is locked up. Kane could be a fantastic option, but I would be surprised if managers go there. Maddison, right now, Leicester are so hard to predict. I couldn't go that way myself. Saka away against Liverpool is definitely a fixture that he could do well in, but I would be surprised if managers opt for him over the likes of Man United or Haaland. Watkins is the big one that I do understand managers pushing for as the differential move. It's something that I would love to be brave enough to do, but I do think I would naturally regress back to the Haaland or Rashford picks. But Watkins right now, his form is an absolute joke, and I couldn't knock anybody if they were going for Watkins over Haaland or Rashford. Right, guys, while that is on your screen there, I'm just going to move over to a fixture schedule, which is going to help you if you are planning on free hitting in game week 32. Now, I'll come on to the questions first, and then we'll come on to the screen here, as I see there are quite a few that I haven't gotten round to yet, and I do appreciate you guys are being very patient with me answering all of these questions. So, hi FPL Nacho, Odegaard to Grealish. I don't mind it at all, but for this game week, I don't think you necessarily need to rush that move. I think Odegaard is perfectly fine for this game week away against Liverpool, but if you were in a position where you were starting to build a team in the knowledge that you were free hitting in game week 30, I think Grealish is a really nice long-term hold. And that's quite a nice segue here, because you can see here, teams to target if you plan on free hitting in game week 32. We have gotten ranked here based on the teams and the fixtures coming up. Now, the teams that are blanking in game week 32, just to remind you, because of course that is a game week that is going to cause a lot of problems if you don't have your free hit available. Man City, Brighton, Man United and Chelsea all blank in game week 32. So just to give you guys an update, what a lot of managers in the community are doing is that they previously wildcarded with the free hit 32 in mind, bringing in Man City, Brighton, Man United and Chelsea assets into their team, knowing that in game week 32, they can simply, while they blank, bring in a team full of players that have the optimal fixture. And then when we move back to game week 33, of course, the free hit reverts back to your previous team. And then you're set up really well for the teams that are doubling in game week 34. As teams that have blanks in game week 32 also have a double in game week 34. For example, Man City, Brighton and Man United. So if you don't have your free hit available in 32, you're in a difficult spot, because if you sell your players at blank in 32, you're then going to want them back for game week 34 where they blank, where they double. So I would argue that just kind of sucking up in game week 32 if you don't have the free hit available is probably the right move. Now, if, and this is going for the people that don't have a free hit available, the teams that I think you do need to start focusing on targeting if you don't have the free hit available is going to be Liverpool assets. They double in game week 34 and they play in game week 32 at home against Nottingham Forest. So I think that's a really good move for your teams if you want to bring in Mo Salah, or if you want to go for a defensive option. I think that's the route that I would go for. Fulham, I know it isn't a tasty pick. I know it isn't necessarily the sexy pick, but I think an Andres Pereira at 4.3 million as a midfielder, he plays against Leeds at home in 32 and doubles in game week 34. That's going to cover you off nicely if you don't have a free hit available. And of course, Arsenal assets. A lot of FPL managers sold Arsenal assets because they play Liverpool away, and they also have games against Man City, Chelsea and Newcastle. Their best fixture on paper is at home against Southampton. And the reason why FPL managers sold Arsenal players is because they can free hit in 32 and bring those Arsenal players back into their team for that 1 week. So really, a lot of managers will probably go for Gabriel Jesus, Saka and Martinelli in their free hit teams. So if you do have a spot where you could bring in an Arsenal player, while a lot of managers have been selling them, I think going back to Arsenal players is absolutely a fine move. And bringing in someone like a Gabriel Jesus at 2% owned could be the differential play for your FPL teams to climb the ranks. Crystal Palace also a good team if you want to target, and similar Bournemouth if you don't free hit in game week 32. Now, for those managers that are planning on free hitting in game week 32, these are the teams that I think are really good long-term transfers for your team. So, for example, Man City, blank in game week 32, but either side of the blank, they are fantastic FPL options available. Haaland is a perfect example of this, and this is why I've mentioned about, even though I'm worried about Haaland's minutes, look at these fixtures coming up. I just cannot believe a world where I don't want Haaland in the upcoming game weeks. And because of that reason, yes, Julian Alvarez feels like a really exciting pick that could pay off. But eventually, game week 34, imagine not having Haaland in that double game week away against Fulham and at home against West Ham. That could be season ending for you if he was to get back-to-back hat-tricks. And because of that reason, I think we accept the pain that we might get early doors for Haaland's minutes to really reap the rewards later down the line. And we need to remember his ownership is going to be massive. Liverpool as well. Their best fixture is at home against Nottingham Forest in game week 32, when a lot of us will free hit. But they are also fantastic transfers for your team if you are free hitting in 32 either way. You can bring them in this week and hope you get a magical Anfield at home display. And then they got Leeds, West Ham and a great double. So good time to bring in Liverpool as well. Man United, we knew this, but again, few people will be put off by Man United with the recent performances. Brighton, we knew they were a good fixture and they're going to continue to be a fantastic team. Yes, the next two are tricky, but I would argue that Brighton are better than both Spurs and Chelsea right now. It's just because we have the perception of Brighton being a mid-table team. Right now, they are playing as a top 4 team. And I think they are really going to be testing both of these teams here. So I think Brighton are still good purchases if you want to bring in a midfielder in particular. I wouldn't be bringing in defenders. And as I said, Fulham are all about the budget picks. I think Andreas Pereira is a really nice move. And I also think Vinicius Jr. up top, he is crap. Absolutely crap, I have to say. However, he is, and I'm just going to get the price up right now, dirt cheap. He is 5.4 million forward. If you really were looking for a forward to play week in, week out, yes, he's crap, but he is going to get minutes because, of course, Mitrovic is suspended. So he could be a move for you if you want to go down that route. So guys, let me know if you are free hitting in game week 32. It'd be really interested to know. Let me come back to the chat, answer some more questions, and we will move on to the last section of this live stream. And again, if you can drop a like, it'll be massively appreciated. I think we've got about 17 likes right now, about 60 in the chat. So if we could get that up closer to 50, that would be always much appreciated. Bueno or Gabriel on the bench this game week? I probably would go for Bueno on the bench. James is asking, Tony to Haaland or Chilwell to Mings? I don't have a free hit. Okay, yeah, so you're in a position right now where you don't have a free hit. And of course, in game week 32, Aston Villa have Fulham away. Apologies. Game week 32, Villa are away against Brentford. So, obviously the sexier pick is going to be bringing in Haaland, but it depends on what the rest of your squad's like, because bringing in Haaland is going to be a problem for your team later down the line if you don't have the free hit available. If you can then bring in Haaland and maybe field 10 for game week 32, I don't mind it. However, you're in a position where if you are in a little bit of a spot where you think Haaland might only get 90 minutes over the next 2 game weeks, could you potentially just hold on to Tony and maybe even hold on to Chilwell for now? I don't think you need to sell Chilwell this week. Roll your free transfer, give yourself a bit of flexibility, knowing that Haaland could punish you this game week, but also if he was to get his minutes managed, you can then look to bring him back in game week 33 rather than this game week. Wolves are saying downgrade Maddison or Fernandes for Haaland, Tony, and a -4. If so, which midfielder would you recommend? It's all about how expensive you can afford. As I mentioned, I would sell Maddison over Fernandes. I think Fernandes long term is going to pay dividends with the fixtures and the doubles that he has. But Maddison, I do appreciate, has a good game week this week, and it's always going to be an issue if you do sell Maddison at home against Bournemouth. And it's all about what price you can go down to. As I discussed, the teams on your screen here are the ones that you would like to target. If you want to go really dirt cheap, you could bring in someone like an Andreas Pereira at Fulham. You could also bring yourself in a Brighton midfielder if you already don't have that player. And if you are free hitting, you could bring in someone like a Grealish, as he is going to benefit if you free hit in game week 32. Paul saying, even in Nacho, is Haaland a must transfer in this game week? Only way is a -4 Tony to Haaland, as Salah to someone like Grealish will free hit in game week 32. So this is the big thing. I don't think Haaland is essential, and I really don't like the idea of you selling Salah. I think it all comes down to which one can you live without. Could you live without Salah? If the answer is yes, then maybe you do sell him and bring in Haaland. But you need to remember the fixtures that you can see on your screen here. The minutes for Haaland, we need to remember, are going to be risky over the next 2 game weeks, whereas Salah has had his rest against Chelsea. He is going to play the majority of the minutes in all of these fixtures coming up. And you need to remember that a lot of the FPL community are going to move towards Mo Salah in game week 33 and onwards because of the double in 34. So because of that reason, I think you need to ask yourself, can you live without Haaland? If you basically can and you really are scared about it, sell Salah, bring in Haaland, just accept what will be will be. But if you are chasing rank right now, I think avoiding Haaland could be a really nice rank chasing move for you. But then you just have to accept that going without Haaland is obviously going to be a risk for your FPL teams. Botman to Mings, I have Trippier and no free hit for game week 32. Would I be doing that? Newcastle at home against Tottenham, I wouldn't be too scared of it. I'll probably hold Botman for now. I see no reason for you to be making that free transfer in this game week. Newcastle, one of the best defences in the league. Kane has to be the best striker in the Prem, praying in the Spurs team with the goal tally also. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Kane has been under the radar, unbelievable this season. And if it wasn't for Haaland, he'll be breaking all sorts of records and getting a lot more love than he is right now. Salah captain against Arsenal, he has a good home record. Yeah, if you really fancy it, FPL Feezy, then go for it. I personally wouldn't myself, just because Liverpool is so hard to predict right now, and I really do rate Arsenal because that away record is fantastic from defensive perspective. As I discussed, they're the best away defence in the league, and if any team is going to be putting up a performance against Liverpool defensively, it is going to be Arsenal. So it is worth noting that I do think that they are the ones that could shut up shop against Liverpool. John saying, miss the first 30 minutes. I have Salah and her Salah didn't train. Is that true? Do you think Haaland to Tony is worth the move? I mean, if it's a free transfer, yes, I do think Tony to Haaland is the move. And I've said this before. The next 2 fixtures, I could easily see Haaland play 50 against Southampton and maybe 30 against Leicester. But it's all about game state. If they start Julian Alvarez against Leicester for that game, they go 4-0 up. I do not see Haaland coming on and being risked ahead of the second leg. So you need to accept that Haaland is a long-term transfer. But after game week 32, where it's a blank, they have Arsenal at home and a double in 34. Can you imagine a world without Haaland in those fixtures? I personally can't. And for that reason, I'm happy to accept what will be in the next 2 fixtures, as I know long-term he is absolutely essential in my eyes as a player. Right, guys, I'm going to keep going with the chat, but what I want to do is quickly come on to the next slide, which is going to be the predicted points for players in game week 30, just to help you with potential transfers that you have. Again, I will leave this on the screen as it does kind of answer a lot of the questions for themselves here. And you can see that on your screen there, guys. Some notable people. Watkins currently leading the way for forwards at 6.1 predicted points. De Bruyne leading the way for midfielders at 5.6. No, I would not be buying De Bruyne, it is worth noting. Defenders, we have a lot of Aston Villa defenders with Mings, Young, Chambers all leading the way from that perspective. And Martinez also looking great as a goalkeeper option this game week. But again, I'll just leave this on the screen for you guys, as it's very, very simple to kind of digest the information. And you can kind of evaluate what you want to with the predicted points on your screen. I'm going to come into the questions, as I'm conscious we're only going to go for another 5 or so minutes. So I don't want to be running too much out of time. I want to make sure we're benefiting you guys in the chat rather than me rambling on about information that you can easily consume on your screen here. So I hope that does make sense for you there. Tenzin saying, hi Nacho, I still have most of my chips left. So can I free hit in 32, then wildcard in 33 and bench boost in 34? Is that okay to use chip? Continue. Tenzin, you have no issues with doing that. That's absolutely fine if you want to do that strategy. You need to remember that if you had 2 free transfers in 31 and you didn't use them, you would then come back to 1 free transfer in 34 when you're bench boosting. But I like the strategy. I especially like the wildcard 33 bench boost 34. I think the only question mark is if your team looks really good for game week 32 and you don't need to free hit, you could potentially look to free hit in game week 37 maybe as an alternative. But I like the plan that you've got in place there if it is best for your team, yes. David, thoughts on free hit in 34? Free hit 34 is definitely a consideration for some people out there. For me, I think 32 is the best move for my personal team. Now, just to explain why I like game week 32 free hit. First and foremost, Liverpool. I don't have any investment in Liverpool assets, and they're at home against Nottingham Forest. So that feels like a really easy move to bring in triple Liverpool. We also have great fixtures for Arsenal. Now, I was one of those managers that decided to sell the majority of my Arsenal assets in order to invest in different players like Man United. Now, they have a fantastic home game against Southampton, so I will not have any Arsenal assets for game week 32. Therefore, free hitting in 32 makes complete sense as I get the opportunity to bring in triple Arsenal assets with that great game. There's also a couple of really nice differentials if you want to go down that route. For example, you could bring in someone like a Dominic Solanke who's at home against West Ham. You've got someone like Crystal Palace who are home against Everton as an opportunity. And you can also fill your team with some cheap enablers. For example, Andreas Pereira at home against Leeds for Fulham is a good option. We need to remember that there are a few difficult games out there. Spurs away against Newcastle could make both Newcastle and Spurs players quite irrelevant for our teams because realistically, in game week 32, I foresee a situation where managers go for Jesus, Martinelli and Saka. They're then going to go for triple Liverpool, potentially Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mo Salah and Darwin Núñez. We're also going to see an investment in the likes of Crystal Palace, as I said, potentially a goalkeeper, or maybe even an attacker if Wilfried Zaha is confirmed available, and maybe a Kieran Trippier in defence. We won't be getting those high explosive players from teams like Man United and Man City, but while a lot of managers will be not free hitting in game week 32, we have to remember that they're going to have ownership in these players. So you free hitting in game week 32 means that you can basically counteract those managers that don't have those players. In game week 34, we need to remember that is a big game week for doublers. Liverpool, Brighton, Man City, Man United, Fulham, West Ham, all double in game week 34. And there's also some fantastic single game week fixtures. Bournemouth at home against Leeds, Newcastle at home against Southampton, Leicester at home against Everton, Palace at home against West Ham. So some really, really good fixtures out there. The reason why I don't like game week 34 is a decent enough distance away for us to prepare our teams for it. So, for example, while I don't have any Liverpool investment for game week 32, I will have Liverpool investment for game week 34 if I decide to prioritise my transfers for 34. So I can get myself to Mo Salah for 34. I can get myself to a defender if I want to have that ownership. I already have triple Brighton, so that really caters for my personal team. And I will also have Haaland and potentially a Man City midfielder already for 34 in their double. I have triple Man United and they double. That again doesn't benefit me if I free hit. And then outside of that, West Ham could be a nice differential, but I don't feel it's essential, especially with one of them doublers being against Man City. So for that very reason, I think 32 caters a lot more managers than it doesn't. But of course, it is all team dependent on how your squad looks for yourself. Would you do Maddison to Matoma for free or Tony to Haaland and Fernandes to McAllister? I would probably do the Maddison to Matoma one, but you need to remember that you are bringing in a player that blanks in game week 32. Now, I kind of said that quite quickly, and I need to reflect on that because selling Maddison, even though Leicester have been terrible at home against Bournemouth, is of course a dangerous move for your team. The reason why I'm a little bit against you doing Tony to Haaland and Fernandes to McAllister of -4 is you are selling Fernandes, who I do think is going to be long-term a good move for your team. Now, I don't like the -4 because of course you are giving points back to the game, which is always a big pet peeve of mine. But I understand it from a long-term perspective as you get McAllister in for his double in 34, he's on penalties, and of course you're bringing in Haaland for the long term. So I think I like option 2, but you're not going to be repaying that probably in the first game week, probably longer term. And you need to remember also, if you are doing that move, you're bringing in 2 players at blank in game week 32. So you need to make sure you are free hitting in game week 32. Sam Garner saying, is it a -8 too much to get Haaland, Grealish and Mings in for Tony, Saka and Shaw? Love the vids, FPL Nacho. Really appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. I don't feel very comfortable right now with the moves that you're planning. Now, the reason being is because I think Saka isn't a desperate transfer out right now, and it's all about whether you are free hitting in game week 32. But realistically, selling Tony, Saka and Shaw for a -8, I don't think necessarily is a desperate move. The big thing about it is, what I would say to you is, Shaw could be held longer term, and when he is fit, he's going to benefit your team. Grealish and Mings are good transfers long term, but again, are you free hitting in game week 32? You might need to let me know, Sam, as I think that's quite important to the answer for that one. Downgrade Madison to Grealish to sell Tony for Haaland and Captain Haaland. Your recommendation is highly appreciated. Okay, so that's for a -4. Again, I really don't like the idea of selling Madison at home against Bournemouth, but if you view it as a long-term move, then I don't mind the move at all. I understand that a lot of managers are buying Haaland out of fear, and if you're in a position right now where you really can't see a situation where you can't go without Haaland, then maybe the -4 is the right move for your team, and you just accept that you are going to have a little bit of pain this game week if Madison does go off, but you are covering yourself with Haaland. So yes, I don't mind it at all. Cristiano saying W stream, really appreciate it. Best cash replacement, preferably doubles in 34. Doesn't matter if they blank in 32. Best cash replacement, long term. So I would love to say to you a Man City player, but I couldn't confidently tell you which one to go for. Maybe Ake, if you were happy to take the risk with Man City options. Outside of that, Liverpool, if you want to go there, but I appreciate it's quite a dangerous place to go right now, especially with Arsenal at home. Alex Moreno at Aston Villa potentially as well is an option for you. Otherwise, I'm not getting too excited by other options. I do apologise. What is Haaland's predicted points for this game week? I can tell you that Haaland's predicted points, now we need to remember, our predicted points for Haaland have been massively reduced due to the minutes that we are anticipating for him, as we really don't know. But regarding Haaland, his projected points are 3. But of course, that is massively skewed by the minutes that we cannot anticipate right now for him. So we had to be a little bit more reserved with our predictions for Haaland as we speak. John, I've still got White and Saka. Should I move them on? John, it's all about if you're free hitting in game week 32. I don't feel like you desperately need to move them on, especially if you're not free hitting in game week 32 as a blank. FPL Josh, bench 1, McAllister, Matoma on March. Wow. Incredibly tough. Firstly, what I will tell you is their projected points for game week 30 in isolation. So Matoma is projected to score 3.8, McAllister 2.7, and March 4.2. So based on that, McAllister will be the one to bench. I personally don't like benching those that have penalties though, and McAllister obviously is that man. Because of that reason, I probably would bench March, play McAllister and play Matoma. Sam, you're saying you're free hitting in game week 32. So then obviously you don't worry about the Haaland and Grealish blanks, which is a good move for you. Okay, so I like the move. But what you need to remember is that you're basically selling Tony, who obviously could go off. Saka is the one that I really don't like you selling, as it could be a nice differential this game week. And it's because you're doing it for a -8, because you're bringing in a rotation risk in Haaland. We could see him play only 50 minutes, and you might not claw back those points. Long term, I like it, because of course Shaw is an injury. But realistically, I think you need to ask yourself, can you go without Haaland? If the answer is no, I would pull the trigger and do that move. If you are in a position where you feel like you can go without him, then I would hold all those players that you have and roll your transfer. So I got saying option 1, Kane to Haaland, or option 2, Tony and Raya to Haaland to steal for a -4. Sega, I probably would prefer option 2, as I really think Harry Kane is a good option for the next 2 weeks. He's guaranteed minutes on penalties. And I really think the Bournemouth at home game could be a big score. And I actually think he could do really well against Brighton, as I think they offer a lot of options for attacking teams. I think they do offer themselves defensively quite open, and I think Kane could take advantage of them. So I'm expecting goals in that game. So because of that reason, I probably would go for option 2 for you there. But again, you might not pay that back in this game week. Replacements for sure that play in game week 32, thanks. Okay, so if you're targeting a player that definitely plays in game week 32, first and foremost, Liverpool are top of the charts. And I do think they are a good move long term, but I appreciate you might not have the money available. Otherwise, you could go for a lesser defender if you really think they're good. 30 offers you a player, 32 offers you a player. Otherwise, Palace are quite a nice move as well. Aston Villa, I don't like their 32 fixture away against Brentford, but Alex Moreno is a nice move as well, and that is within budget for you. Right, guys, we have been going for around an hour, and unfortunately, I do have a deadline of 8 p.m. that I need to wrap up on. So I unfortunately am going to have to wrap up this live stream in the next minute. So I will quick fire the next minute, and then unfortunately, I'm going to have a hard deadline where I do cut it off. So I do apologize, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's do a minute speed round. Any last minute questions, get them in now, and I will be answering them. And we are also going to do a 1 minute poll where we're going to be putting in game week 30 captain. And guys, anyone in the chat, I want you to put in a super quick 1 minute vote on who your FPL captain is going to be. I'm going to be putting in Rashford, I'm going to be putting in Watkins, and I'm also going to be putting in other. If we're in a position where you are other, can you put your captain in the chat? And right, I've just put that in there. Please do drop a vote on the poll. We're going to do that for a minute. I'm going to be asking questions for a minute, answering questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. So let's go. FPL Nacho, good evening. Hope you're doing well, buddy. John, can you still do your free transfer in a game week when you play the free hit? If you play your free hit, all your transfers are going to be free hit transfers. You can't play your free transfer. So basically, if you do a free transfer, free hit before the deadline, that free transfer you made won't actually work. Hopefully that answers your question, John. WB, start Zuma or a Stupinan. So based on this game week in isolation, I probably would start probably from a clean sheet perspective, I'd fancy Zuma. From an attacking perspective, I'd fancy a Stupinan. I'm probably just going to say Zuma and hope that West Ham banks back from that performance. Sam got a watch stream, mate. Love the content. Appreciate it, Sam. I'm so torn to make the -8 or not. Sam, I think in your position, as you said, it's all about how much do you weigh up Haaland as an option for you. If you think you cannot go without Haaland, then I'm looking at your team. I think you're in a position where you can't really get to him because you don't have the money available for Tony. So realistically, the only other option available is, I imagine you're probably going to need you're probably freeing up 4 million, 3 million to get yourself to Tony to Haaland. The only other thing I say to you is, could you just do Saka all the way down to an option? Could you do Saka down to Andres Pereira, for example, at Fulham? Maybe that's an alternative for you, but to give you just a -4 rather than a -8, what I would say to you is this: check the -4 options. Can you downgrade one of your players like Saka to a midfielder that you like, and then potentially do Tony to Haaland? Save yourself not doing the -8s. I think Shaw long term is a good move. Start Matoma on March. I personally would go for Matoma. I think that is the better move, and he is delivering right now, and he is also very much the community pick from an ownership perspective. And in the voting right now, 40% are go for Haaland, 27 Rashford, 32 Watkins, which is very, very interesting. Right, guys. John says Saka, Matoma or March on the bench. I would probably go for March on the bench on that one there. Right, guys. I'm going to wrap that one up there. I do apologise I can't go longer, but I did have an 8 p.m. hard deadline, so I really hope you guys appreciate that. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you can drop a like on the way out, it would be much appreciated. A reminder, there is a potential chance that Tony falls in price and Haaland rises, so please do be wary of that if you have no money in the bank after tonight. Take care, guys. Thank you so much.